I've never actually had a real job. I was at the NBA. I did the salary cap, which was difficult but fun, and worked on basketball cards. If you guys remember NBA hoops or skybox cards, that was my guys. And then Marvel bought the Fleer trading card company and asked me to come down and start a comic book trading card division. And we became one of those tails that wags the dog. We actually were making more money from Marvel cards than Marvel was making on comics, which hurt their feelings. But that's not why they fired me. They fired me because I was the boy who told the emperor he had no clothes. I said, listen, if you keep shipping cards like this and over-shipping comics, we're all going to go bankrupt from the returns. So they sent me home and they went bankrupt. Then I had a really nice job at Madison Square Garden as executive vice president, and then in 1999, Ike Perlmutter, who was a friend of mine from the Marvel days, he ran Toy Biz, I ran Fleer. He brought me back to be chief operating officer and publisher. We got a wonderful elevator ride up. I got to retire at the ripe old age of 40. And a couple of years ago, my wife kicked me out of the house again. And I went to Take-Two, Grand Theft Auto, the video game company, Grand Theft Auto, BioShock, and they asked me to put a team together to start up a comic book division. And we stumbled for a couple of years, and we're ready to ship in September, and here we are. Okay. If you don't mind, I have another slide. And when I speak, I'm going to speak about that. And I think you might have more fun after if you have any questions, but I would like to sort of turn it over to Jim.
And what am I supposed to say?
Oh, you don't even have to look at that.
Oh. What am I talking about?
Well, we're giants of the industry.
I'm big. He's a normal-sized giant of the industry. But anyway, you mean talk about the history of the ups and downs?
Oh, I think people, including me, would love to hear about your career.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Yeah, all right. Well, I started at DC Comics when I was very young. I was 13 when I sold my first story. Everybody knows that. And the thing was, at that time, comics was really a mass market medium. I mean, when I was writing Superman, it was selling 1.2 million copies a month. Not because of me. My name wasn't even on the book. They didn't give credits. But it was because people liked Superman. And most DC Comics sold pretty big numbers. My main book was Legion of Superheroes, and on the very first issue I did, they had one of those postal statements of ownership. You ever seen those? So you can have the second-class mailing privileges. And it said that the book was averaging about 500,000 copies sold a month. And in the last Legion of Superheroes book I did, there was a statement of ownership, and it said that the Legion of Superheroes was selling about 500,000 copies a month. All the other DC titles had fallen, which made me feel pretty special because I was holding my own. But anyway, there was a kind of an odd time because Marvel had taken off, and as Marvel went up, DC kind of went down. It was an odd time. In the early 70s, Marvel expanded because they stopped being distributed by the same distributor that DC Comics was distributed by, which happened to be owned by the same company that owned DC Comics. DC Comics was published by National Periodical Publications, and what was the name of the distributor? You remember?
Well, I only knew
Independent News.
Okay.
Independent News. So anyway, the thing is, Marvel got bought. Martin Goodman, who owned it, sold it to this company called Perfect something or other, and Perfect Chemical or something like that. Anyway, and they turned their name into Cadence Industries, and so Marvel was a division of Cadence Industries. Well, conveniently, Cadence Industries owned Curtis Circulation, and so instead of being confined by DC's distributor to only being able to do like 12 titles, now they could do whatever they wanted. So all of a sudden there's 100 titles, So the 70s was kind of weird. In the early 70s, it was kind of up and down and all over the place. Marvel expanded too quickly. Some of the stuff they put out was crap. DC hadn't recovered all the way from their long fall. So anyway, DC and Marvel were roughly tied, and newsstand sales were generally declining, and it looked like Marvel was going to go out of business because we were losing about $2.5 million a year when I came in. And I'd like to say that I just, it just saved everything and everything. But it was a lot of different things that happened. The direct market started to take off. We started getting better people. People started making money, which meant more better people came. And we turned it around, and the whole industry grew, and Marvel grew crazy, like crazy, and the sales really went up. We had a really great time for a while, and then the company was being sold, and when a company is being sold, and I was the vice president, and you're an executive, you're expected to help the people who own the company rape the employees. That's true. I mean, you're supposed to you're either on management's side and on the owner's side, or you're a labor leader. And so I became a labor leader, and they did some stuff I couldn't stop. They cashed out the pension plan. They cut the health insurance down to the bone. They took away the matching money for your 401k. They did everything they could. They were counting paper clips at night, trying to put more money on the bottom line. Because as Bill will tell you, companies like that are sold for a multiple of their earnings, a multiple of their the cash flow, the pre-tax profit. And so they putting more money on the bottom line meant that they would get more money when they sold it. And so I'm trying to fight and defend my troops. The executives and the owners decided that they were going to retroactively cancel the royalty program. Well, that one I won. I threatened class action suit. I said, I'm going to walk out of here and going to a lawyer. We're going to sue your asses. And so they gave up. So I won that one. Won. So, but meanwhile, they were making me into the pariah of comics and blaming everything on me. Gerber, Kirby, the weather, it was all my fault. And people bought it. They said, yeah, well, yeah, he's a bad guy, And so anyway, I got fired from Marvel, and no one would hire me. And I thought, well, I was the chief. Surely somebody will, I can write something for somebody. Am I the worst writer that ever lived? I can't get anything. But I was kind of the pariah of comics. So the only thing I could do was start my own company. And I did, Valiant. And we had no money and we were using kids out of the Kubert school. The only guys I could get to work for me is after, 6 or 8 months, Bob Layton's contract ran out, and DC didn't want him, Marvel didn't want him, so we became like the Oakland Raiders. Anybody that. So anyways, and then Barry Wins us with the same thing. Barry is a obstreperous guy, and he kind of burned his bridges at Marvel and DC, and so we were the only game in town. And but we had a few other good guys. We had Don Perlin, and we started getting other guys like John Dixon and Stan Drake, for God's sake. Stan Drake couldn't get a job. He had to work for me. I mean, he couldn't get a job with the big company. Stan Drake can't get a job? Anyway, so that went pretty well, but that got stolen from me by white-collar criminals, aided and abetted by certain creative people who shall remain nameless, who pocketed millions of dollars. Stabbed me in the back for money. Cool. So then I started another company, and that one launched on the very month that the whole industry plunged off the edge of a table. This was probably because all the retailers were just glutted with inventory, all that Death of Superman stuff that they couldn't sell, and Rebirth of Superman stuff they couldn't sell, and Marvel stuff they couldn't sell. So anyway, the industry went from, let's call the high point 100%, they went down to 18%, okay? And it's hard to survive in that environment. But fortunately, Lorne Michaels is crazy, the guy that does Saturday Night Live and Broadway Video, yeah. And so he and his guys made a deal to publish Broadway comics and brought me in to do that. And we did it for, we were actually doing pretty good. We'd turned the corner and started to make money and everything like that, but then they sold the entire entertainment division, including us, to Golden Books. On the first day, what's his name, Dick Snyder, said to me, we don't want to publish comics, we're going to close you down. And so we got closed down. And then ever since then, I've been freelance writer, DC, Dark Horse, custom commercial stuff, and Social Security. And and here I am today, but I have lots of funny stories, and you know what? All in all, it wasn't a bad ride.
So thank you. That was fun. It was great to hear it all in one place. We'll have questions at the end. I'll speak a couple of minutes. I'm blessed with a memory like a sieve, so I only remember happy things. I
Want some of mine?
I think I got some. I went back. I went to work in Marvel in January 2000, and it was the worst of times. It was the worst of times. Marvel had lost their customer base. Book like Uncanny X-Men in the mid 90s was doing 1 million units. Amazing Spider-Man 1 million units. By the time 2000 rolled around, those books were down to 100,000. Average book in the mid 90s, 600,000. Right, lots of money, lots of fun. 2000 down to 40,000. In the year 2000, down to 40,000 units. 10,000 retailers in the mid 90s. By 2000, there were 3,000 left, and most of them were coughing up blood. So we brought in a team that went to work on a model to grow the industry. Thing number one was a page out of Jim Shooter's book, which is make sure people can understand what's happening on the pages of the comics. So whether the books were going to be great or whether they're going to be good, you could at least understand what was going on. And as Jim will tell you, the next thing we did was walking in the door, I do turnarounds, and one of the reasons why they brought me in was the thing was broken so badly, and I know how to, fix broken. And the first thing you do when you're fixing something broken is you walk around and you talk to your retailers, your suppliers, your staff, and every man, woman, and child said that we need more teens in comics, that we needed teen readers. So I said, well, why don't we turn the characters into teenagers so teenagers would like them? Horror, it was a bloodbath. The proposal was for Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men. The Ultimates, things that turned into movies, ultimately was very unpopular in the building. Luckily, it was popular with the target audience. So what we did is we created Ultimate Spider-Man first, and that was the ultimate what-if book. What if Spider-Man was a teenager in the year 2000? It sold like crazy. But what we didn't do is we didn't kill off the books for the adult collectors who had been collecting their whole lives. So we kept the continuity going. We brought in stars. J. Michael Straczynski came in to do Amazing. Garth came back and did X-Men. And I just got to finally enjoy comics that my company was making. And then the next twist was to go from soap opera style to storytelling, where to understand number 300, you would have had to have read number 200 to 250, but when you went back to 250, you couldn't understand that because you didn't read the other 50. So we encouraged the writers to write in story arcs as if they were writing a movie, and we told them the big fib, which, we're going to go get these made into movies. We had never gotten anything actually made into a movie. We had gotten things made into contracts that didn't become movies, but movies no chance. And then Hollywood looked at Ultimate Spider-Man, and miraculously that went from a 20 years in development to, boom, comic book. Because people understood that you could tell a story about the teenager before they put the costume on, and it could make you laugh and make you cry. And the next thing we did a good job at story selling. My guys, by hook or by crook, handed out 12 million samples of free comics, Hey Kids comics. And kids got them for free, and they were good books, and we started the collector habit. And really with 12 million, you don't need more than 1 or 2% to switch over to have a healthy business. We priced to sell $2.25. I've said to the guys, every board meeting, every board member screamed at me because they wanted the prices higher. And I took one economics class, right? Prices go up, volumes go down.
One
so I'm
more
telling,
than me.
Thank you. Well, tell a room, you've told roomfuls of MBAs, right? All right. And then, like Jim, we didn't just work the comic book market, we worked the mass market. And it was very helpful to have books that were stories that were told in story arcs, because then you had something that you could turn into a graphic novel, and that you'd have something that the bookstores would carry. And the bookstores are carrying them like crazy. Actually, Barnes & Noble today is the only area in Barnes & Noble that's growing is graphic novels. So, 3 cheers. And then finally, we all felt that the book should be collectible. That if you took the risk with us and bought the book and spent the money, that you might end up with something that you bought for $2.25 that's worth $100. So that was the model. And I left Smiling in 2004 with that model on the left-hand side. And since then, the industry, that Marvel at least, and the industry in general, has sort of slid all the way back. Now, I'm not a giant of the industry. My little company, Take-Two, is the munchkin of the industry. But I look at the giants, and I look at the things that industry leaders are supposed to do to keep the industry healthy, and I just don't see it anymore. So generally speaking, the books are confusing. Both companies have obliterated their universes. What's come back, you know better than I do. I can't make it all the way. They said 52. I got halfway through one, and I tossed it. We're back to soap opera storytelling. It's very hard to pick up a graphic novel and know what's going on. Listen, these are people who love comics. I mean, I don't love the Citizens United decision. I think it's horrible for democracy and horrible for America. But what they got right is a corporation is a separate thing. It lives, it breathes, it makes decisions that each individual person would never make. You make them in the corporate environment. And that's how it feels right now. It's decisions being made in a corporate environment that are not good for the people in the industry. Free samples. I mean, there's not no samples. There's still Free Comic Book Day. Thanks a lot, one day a year for people who already collect comics. The price is up to $5. I have, thank you, stock options. I'm not going to spend $5 for 24 pages. And by the way, it'll be worthless in the end, because if that book gets hot, they'll just print 100,000 more and you don't get an investment out of it. So I look at the left-hand side and I look at the right-hand side, and it feels like if the industry is going to get back on its feet, in general, that it's going to be the independent publishers who are going to have to lead the way. And luckily, my group is backed by Take-Two Games, which, look at the financial statements, has $1 billion in the bank, and they're happy to support us. So I want to turn it back to you, Jim, because you've been on both sides, as I have, about how you feel about the industry's going today.
Well, I've often been asked, like, what do you think of the industry today, or what's wrong with the industry today, and that's it. I mean, I say the same things that it says over there. I've been preaching clear storytelling. Everybody knows that. And a lot of people say, oh, you just want it simple and dumb. I say, no, you see, it's more sophisticated. It's actually more sophisticated than the shattered glass panel arrangements, because, and people doing all these crazy shots and angles and stuff like it. Do you ever see Cameron tilt the camera? It's called a Dutch tilt. Okay, he moves it all around, but he doesn't do this. Neither does Spielberg, neither did Lucas, neither do most directors. But every comic book artist, because he wants to be an artiste, it looks like an earthquake, all the tilted horizons and stuff. I'm not against that. Kirby did it sometimes, and he did it when there was a reason. Human Torch is 1,000 feet in the air, so he gives you a little bit of vertigo, that, a little tilted horizon to give you a feeling of that airplane banking thing. Fine, you can do anything. There's nothing you can't do if you set it up or if the situation is right for it. So, I'm not as stodgy as people think I am. I'm actually asking for more sophisticated, which means that anyone can read it. An adult can read it easily and get a lot of meaning out of it. A kid can read it, and it's Spider-Man, fighting Dr. Octopus. That's fine. That's what we're going for. And that's what I've always told people. Anyway, I agree with everything he said. I've been saying the same things, and, but I think the big companies are just, they're too busy obliterating, and some of the stuff that comes back I just don't even recognize. Anyway.
Okay, so time for questions. You guys can either yell, which is fine, or there's a mic, or I could go out and I can do that. That's about as long as I sit down.
Oh, good for him. This guy can walk.
Questions? Okay, here you go.
Hi, thanks. I had a question for both of you guys. I know that obviously the digital format is something that, is a product of modern times, and I wanted to know how you guys felt about how that's affecting the market. And also, do you think the size of a distributor, or more specifically the size of certain comic book stores, like let's say MidtownComics.com, like those large distributors, do you think that they either affect the industry positively or negatively, and why?
I think Bill should go first.
Could you do me a favor?
He's had more recent experience.
Your video back on, please. Oh, so that mic is on, so we'll go up to the mic for the next one. But Jim, why don't you go first?
Me?
Yeah.
how do I think the movement into digital comics affects things? Well, at least at first, I'm not sure how it stands at this moment, but at least at first it was kind of a problem. I worked for Dark Horse, and Mike Richardson said that every book they published was pirated before it shipped from the printer, and it was available online for free, and he felt that that was a major fact that was diminishing his sales. And I don't know if that's been addressed or corrected, or they found a way to coexist with it or not. Cory Doctorow is an advocate of let them do it, give it away. And then his theory is that if it's, he calls it the dandelion theory. It's like the seeds from the dandelion go everywhere, and a million of them get out there. And then as Bill said, but if there's a lot of them out there, and only a small percentage of those people say, hey, yeah, I want to have a physical copy of this book, that you'll be ahead. I don't know. I do know that posed some problems. The other thing I know is that the comics actually look better on the screen than they do on paper. I still like to have a book in my hand, but they do look kind of nice, don't they? And what that does, the digital format paves the way for what I would call small special effects. I'm not talking about motion comics and sound and all this stuff like that, but you can do. You can do small movements if the situation calls for it. If it's not just gratuitous, you can do different things with lighting and stuff, and the colors all look brighter, don't they? It's kind of cool. So especially with how murky the coloring has gotten, it's nice to have it a little brighter. Okay.
So any Springsteen fans here? Springsteen fans. Okay, I took a wrong turn and just kept going. So when Marvel decided not to reprint or overprint comics, we ran out of our good books fast. But you make books so people will read them. So 2001-ish, we developed the Comixology system. In fact, Johnny Roberts, our tech guy, went from Marvel to Comixology to start Comixology, and that's that guided view system. Now, what we found is that the books that sold out and sold well would get on digital, and then the second issues would go up. So the things that are the real proof that we had is when we would go digital, we would go up. Now, you have to finish it though, because a digital audience that doesn't come to retail and buy it does you some good if you have an advertising arm and you're promoting a movie, it does you some good, but to do you a lot of good, you want that person to get hooked on comics and go to the comic shops. So that's why you need collectability, because the print book doesn't just have it has a tactile value, it's fun to read, but there's that feeling, I just bought this for $2.25 and now it's worth $10. I think that you got to finish the punchline. If we get lucky, we'll put up so you can see what we're doing now, which is at Take-Two, we're doing the first native mobile player. Kids don't have comic books in their back pocket now, they have cell phones in their front pocket. So if it doesn't come up, you can go to doubletakeuniverse.com and see it. We're building panels, we're building comic books a panel at a time. They play really well mobily, and we do the work to make them look good in print.
That's really funny, because some years ago, when I first got a phone that looked vaguely like this, I saw people like trying to read comics on this, and a lot of the Comixology stuff was at that time like this, and you had to kind of scroll around the page, and the artists were doing all kinds of funny shaped panels, and so you might have a funny shaped panel sticking into the screen, and you just like a little corner of some other panel while you're trying to look at this panel. And so I proposed to several publishers, including Dark Horse. I said, make every panel a movie screen, like that. Flip, 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 and a panel at a time. The movie screen, you go to see the movies, the screen doesn't change size and shapes and jump around. It's one size. This is a good size. You have two eyes set side by side, so your range of vision is roughly an oblong like that. That's why movie screens are shaped the way they're shaped, and that's coincidentally that shape. So I thought that there might be some more better opportunity for digital if we did it a panel at a time, and there are many ways that you can repackage that and put it on paper if you want, and so forth. But anyway, that's an idea as time has come. I probably wasn't the first guy to think of it, but I think a lot of people are headed that direction, and you certainly seem to be in that mindset. So anyway, yeah, I think that another thing he said was collectability. That's what I always thought is that, okay, do them online, but put something in the books that you can't get online. You know, make it something special. And I'm not talking about the foil stamped embossed, you know, I'm talking about maybe some extra feature or some background material or something that is unique to the printed book. So you want to have it. You know, if you like the story, you say, yeah, well, I get that, and I get all this other cool stuff. And then, you know, then maybe people would buy the actual book. I don't know. Still theories in development, but he knows more about it than I do because he's on the case.
Okay, now you've been patient. Would you like to ask your question to Jim?
Well, yeah, I didn't realize just how bad the industry was, Mr. Shooter, until you told me about it. So I'm just wondering, why do you think there are so many scumbags in charge of the industry? What attracts them there?
Well, money, you know, I mean, the thing is, like, when I first started at Marvel, we were losing money, and I was like a naive kid. I mean, I thought I was supposed to do my job. I thought, you know, my job is to make these comics good and sell comics and make Marvel successful, and I made the stupid assumption that the president of the company felt the same way, and the vice president of business affairs felt the same way, and the other people felt the same way. And you know, and at first they kind of did, because I mean, like, we started doing well, and I was getting support. I mean, basically, I was the highest ranking person at Marvel Comics who had ever actually opened a comic book. I kid you not. Our international licensing lady called me up one day. She said, I just made the greatest deal for Wonder Woman. I said, that's DC. She said, what? So I told her that, I can't remember the name of the DC licensing lady, but I said, call her, tell her you did her a favor and made her a deal, you know. And she said, I can't believe we don't own Wonder Woman. Why'd they call us? I said, because we're Marvel Comics and people think we're comics, you know. And then I had the promotions lady call me up one time and ask me, how many stories are in each comic book? Is it 3 or 4 or what, you know? I said, well, you know, generally it's 1, and sometimes the stories are continued. She said, why do you do that? Like, well, why don't you read them and find out, you know? But I mean, it was like that. I mean, they used to bring me along. One of the reasons I know so much about licensing, international licensing, stuff like that, it's just they would have to bring me along, because if they were trying to license it to somebody and they asked a question, they were helpless. You know, they needed somebody who knew what was going on in the comics. And they were actually proud of the fact that they'd never, oh, we don't read this stuff, you know? Anyway, so I think that, okay, I got pretty much unlimited support. I could get away with the damnedest things. You know, the famous story of Chris Claremont went to a miserable convention someplace, and then he found out that the Avengers team went to West Palm Beach, and he said, how come I didn't get to go to West Palm Beach? I said, you signed up for this, pal, you know? Anyways, I said, well, where do you want to go? He said, Paris. I said, okay, you got it. He said, you can't do that. Yes, I can. Because we were making all kinds of money. So all I did was go upstairs and talk to the licensing people, get them to call the French publishers and get them to agree to do a little extra publishing and maybe some promotion. And, you know, and then we'd get a bigger guarantee and we'd get an advance and they might sell some more books. So I made it so it was like self-liquidating, you might say. Actually, we were going to be profitable. And I came down and I said, congratulations, you know, pack for Paris. So I'm getting away with all this stuff, you know, because we were making all the money. So my group, we could do all kinds of stuff. So then we made all the money. We made lots of money, right? Then the owners, the board of directors had taken the company private. That means they'd taken it off the stock market, and it was owned by the 6 guys. Okay, and so now we're making all kinds of money. They see their chance to cash in. They want to sell it. And as soon as they wanted to sell it, like I said, they're all going to get their pockets lined, and I'm a labor leader. And that is usually bad for the labor leader. But anyway, so it's all about money. I mean, it really is. And I think Bill said it exactly right. You know, I mean, Marvel, when I was at Marvel, I was the editor-in-chief, vice president. I reported to the president of the company. Stan was over here someplace. He wasn't even on the organizational chart, but he was Stan Lee. So anything he said, if he said jump, I'd jump. But, you know, because he's Stan Lee. Anyway, so, but it was me and the president of the company, you know. And I think even in your era, there were more layers between the top and the bottom, right?
We couldn't afford layers. I was the layer.
You were it?
Yeah, when I got to Marvel, it was the first time they combined consumer products and new media and publishing under one umbrella, and it was just night and day, because you were not allowed to be ignorant of the product. If you worked in my group, you lived and breathed comics, and Jim, it really mattered. It made an enormous difference.
I think when you were there, that's probably true. But I mean, I just look at the credits sometimes, and they've got the editor-in-chief, and they've got some kind of chief creative officer, and they've got somebody above him, and they've got somebody.
They have money now.
Huh?
They have money now. They can have extra people.
Yeah, and so there's like these layers, and it's kind of the same at DC. They have an awful lot of people who, you know, seem to have a say, and no one seems to really, you know, be where the buck stops, and that's a very corporate way to do things. And I think that, you know, what happens is that, you know, I mean, if I had to get everything I did approved by Galton or by the executive vice president of business affairs, we never would have done anything, you know. But like I said, apparently you had the same situation where you had a fairly free hand, and I did too. And now I think it's much more corporate. It's much more Disneyfied.
If we have a lot of questions, we'll do the answers faster. So why don't you do the next one? Yeah. Unless you want to yell.
How does your company affect the gaming? How does your company affect the gaming industry? In what way? Dollars.
Oh, so the question is, how does our company affect the gaming industry? Well, during Jim's period at Marvel, gaming was checkers and chess. During my period, there was an electronic gaming explosion, and this is more of a licensing division question. It was Marvel's largest revenue area. We had Activision did the Spider-Man game, which is incredibly successful, and frankly, more kids had their first experience through that Activision game than through any other area. This won't surprise you. We twisted Activision's arm and forced them to give out 2 million free Spider-Man comics through a retailer. So we had a really good synergy between the electronic gaming companies and the comic book division. And then the game companies, they're smart people. They hired Mark Miller, Brian Bendis, Garth. They would hire the comic writers to go in and bring some authenticity and some oomph and some narrative to game storytelling, which if you're not careful, just is is just a shootout. So people like Mark Millard turned the Marvel games into adventures, not just shootouts.
Yeah, and when back in my day when they were playing Pin the Tail on the Triceratops.
I had to say, Jim.
Yeah. That was just having anything to do with games was just a dream. I mean, I kept trying to preach to the people upstairs who blinked their big cow eyes at me. I kept saying, you know, if we could just get even the simplest game, you know, that had Spider-Man, some little figure of Spider-Man where you could move him around and stuff, you know, but they just ignored me, and there really wasn't. We didn't have that opportunity, honestly. And you know, later in my checkered career. I did get some involvement with video games. I got some by remote control because when Acclaim bought Valiant, they ended up doing a Turok Dinosaur Hunter game based on what I'd done. That was very successful. I think they did a sequel to it. And they did a Shadow Man game that was somewhat less successful, but still successful. And so it was like, finally. But I think that your company is related to a video game company.
So Take-Two Games is sponsoring us to start the comic book division.
So I think, you know, that's nice. That's a good little connection to have.
It's good to have. Anyone else? Oh, okay, one and then two. Sorry about that. Okay.
Good afternoon, guys. Branching out from such large companies such as DC and Marvel, what are some of the bumps in the road that you guys have ran into going into your own companies?
Well, I'm fresh out of companies at the moment. I mean, I started a company because I needed to make a living. I needed to eat. Interesting, the way that happened was that after I left Marvel and couldn't get a job, one of the people tried to buy Marvel was Western Publishing. One of the companies tried to buy Marvel was Western Publishing, which was largely owned by a guy, Bernstein, Richard Bernstein. Richard? Yes.
Richard Bernstein.
Yeah. Anyway, and when he was trying to buy, he got all the way to the end and walked away from the deal because the greedy Marvel people kept asking for like a nickel more, and he had spent $500,000 on what they call due diligence, accountants and lawyers, walked away from it because he just was sick of those people. Well, in the course of his trying to buy Marvel, he interviewed me several times, and he said one of the nicest things anyone has ever said to me. He said, the longer I look into this, the more I think I'm buying you and some used furniture, right? Now, he didn't mean me, he meant the creative guys, all right? But still, it was a nice thing to say, So anyway, after that, after I couldn't get a job, I called him up, got an appointment with him, and went to see him and told him, I said, you own some comic book characters? He did not know. So I explained to him that he owned Magnus and Solar and the others. And his first thought was, well, let's start a comic book company, you can run it. But his people really weren't into it. And he said, look, I'm not going to shove it down their throats, because then they'll just find a way to sabotage it. So tell you what, why don't you license it and start your own company? And I said, well, I don't have any money yet. And he said, I will hold them for you. He held them for 2 years. He had offers constantly from Marvel, Dark Horse, DC, other people. And his licensing guy had been instructed, hold these characters. That guy called me every week, said, are you sure you're going to do something? I can make so much money. We could make so many deals. Are you sure you're going to do something? So anyway, I eventually did raise money, and we started Valiant. But so mine was sort of necessity. Valiant was so successful that it was easy to raise money to start Defiant. And Defiant was reasonably successful, but it was interesting enough for Lorne Michaels and the Broadway people to, when that went down, they said, well, why don't you come and let's do comics? People are crazy, but sure, so it was a good gig. But I mean, so mine doesn't kind of count. He knows better.
So Jim, I just put two and two together. You are personally Valiant and Defiant. Those are wonderful names for your business. So Marvel, look at the left side. Oops, it's gone. The left side of the chart. Anyone in this room could have done what I did at Marvel. I mean, you had to be tough, but it wasn't about intelligence. It was about having your eyes open. So while most creators were listening to the 100 people left at comic book shows telling them how great they were, I was watching 800,000 people march off the industry. But I didn't have to be smart. I just had to be tough. And I'm from Jersey. You're tough or dead. Being a small company, you have to be smart. I mean, I think starting this up, Norrin started working that never worked before. We had to sort of figure that out. We had to figure out how to get on a cell phone and how to make it work. We had to hire the programmers. We had to sit with them. We had to make it work. We looked at what independent publishers have to do, which is publish one comic book at a time. You spend $15,000 in creative cost to get a comic book done. You solicit it through Diamond. They buy 5,000 units. You print them for $1 each, right? You sell 5,000. You just go broke slowly and painfully. So we had to figure out what to do with the distribution system. If you come by the Double Take booth, you'll see we're packing all of our 10 number ones into a super pack and selling them that way. You just have to be smarter than you have to be at a big company. The challenges at a large company really relate to employee motivation and board fighting, because board members tend to look at today. And if you're running a business, you have to look long term. Board members like to cut salaries. The boards in general, so I feel a lot of Jim's pain. I was spared some of it because Board members in general like to cut costs. Managers in general like to grow revenues. I had a good partnership with Ike Perlmutter. I was raised not spending money. I'm a turnaround guy. He understood and saw how much money we made at Fleer. So we had a nice partnership going. He covered my ass on the cost side, and I helped him build a business on the revenue side. So that was a nice relationship. Really rare, though. But anyway, the short answer to your question, if you're small, you better be smart.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
I don't know if you guys answered this before I came in, but I just want to get your opinion on the way things were back then compared to now. I'm talking about with the way the comics are being published. Like, it seems like every 3 months they got a new event coming out, and they do 100 different variants for one issue, and then when that event's done, they got another event in time to do another event.
I was talking to somebody a week ago in Las Vegas, and he said exactly that. He said he said back when you were doing it, Jim, he said it used to be each issue, it was about a story. And he said now it's each issue is an event. And it's almost like they stay up all night thinking, what's the most shocking thing we can do to Batman? Let's break his back. And it stops being about like Batman. It starts being about like what you can do to him, And so I agree with you. And I sort of regret the fact that Valiant was doing some of that stuff, but we were naive about it, frankly. We did a couple of variant covers and stuff. The only thing I'll say in our defense is we didn't sell them. We gave them away. Like retailers would buy some money and we'd give them a copy. And now see that was, so we're feeling all noble. We just give it away. It's like getting a gold record, or something. No, it isn't, because the dealer then, puts that in plastic, puts it on the wall, says it's $100. And so here you are, you're collecting Eternal Warrior, and you wish you had that one, but you can't afford it. And it just, it was stupid. We did the trading, the coupons in the books, thinking, oh, this is cool. People buy it, and they cut out the coupons, and then we'll send them an exclusive book that only they get. Yeah, but nobody wants to cut up their comics. And then, so then they're accusing us of, oh, you're just trying to get us to buy 2. Well, maybe, but even if they bought 2, they didn't want to cut one up. So one guy photocopied the stuff, real good photocopies. So we sent him a photocopy of Magnus Zero. All right, we had fun. But anyway, so I think that we participated in creating some of the chaos. But I absolutely agree with you. I think that when they were doing, 6 variant covers, and then the special platinum edition that was $500. And no, I'm all about story. I just want to tell a story. And when we were at Marvel at my era, when the X-Men was selling near 1 million copies a month, it was practically 1 million people buying it. Some people bought 2, but I mean, very rarely were people buying cases of this stuff and thinking they were going to use that to put their kids through college. I think we got to get back to the point where we have a lot more people who are interested in the story, and they just can't wait to find out what happens to Spider-Man next month, like me when I was a kid, and not, wondering what kind of foil embossing would be on the cover, or whether or not, Aunt May would die. Is she still around? Oh, okay.
I don't want to be a broken record, but it does come down to the same point. You don't have to be smart to run a comic book company, a large one. You just have to have guts. So what happens is, if you do a crossover, you make more money for a little while, but you'll have, during that entire while, it's almost impossible to get a new reader in. So you have a little bit of a short-term blip, but you don't have a product that you can sell to a new reader. You do a variant cover, and you see a little blip in collectability at that point, but you've diluted the marketplace. As I said yesterday, my Italian grandpa would have called it pissing in the soup, that you're much better off for the long haul. You have one book, it's called Ultimate Spider-Man, you buy that, it's not confusing, it's simple, and you make the market, because inside that book is a great story. If it's a great story, you win. If it's not, you don't. Good, because that incentivizes you to keep the stories going good. Anyone else? Please.
Hi, I'm really enjoying listening to you guys. I don't know really much about the comic industry. I'm a dad. I'm here with my daughter. I saw your Double Take booth. Very interesting concept. My daughter is not a comic book person. She's obsessed with Japanese anime. And I was wondering, looking at your digital comics, how do Japanese kids read comics? Are they reading them on their phones?
Right to left.
Say that last few words again.
How are Japanese kids consuming comics? Do
You
they
wanna
have
take
a
it, or-
digital comic
Yeah.
system?
Around the yes,
And thank
the readership of digital comics is spectacularly large, and it's spectacularly large worldwide. Manga format is much more hospitable to, just because it's smaller, it's much more hospitable to pads and to iPhones. So there's a tremendous amount of overall digital readership. The reason we developed this player is it's generally not as good an experience to read a comic book online because the books are too big. And manga has this problem as well. And my wife studies neurology. If you're reading a comic book online and you can't see the whole thing, then you find yourself activating your motor cortex and scrolling around. It's very hard to suspend your disbelief and immerse when you're physically active. It's fine to click. It's fine to have something that becomes automatic, but it's not automatic. You can't immerse. So there is a lot of digital readership around the world. John Taddeo, who's a former marketing person for both Fleer and Marvel, tells us, every Monday there'll be 80,000, John?
Downloads, yeah, the whole Marvel pack or DC pack on torrents, downloaded tens of thousands on data ship.
Tremendous amount of online readership. Now, as there are a lot of people who listen to that and say, "Oh my God, that's money I could have had."